Okay, in this video, what I'm going to do is walk through several key problems that students have been asking me about to help prepare for the quiz tomorrow. The quiz is over section 5.4 and 5.5, which is the sum and difference formula for sine and sine and tangent, as well as the double angle formula for cosine, sine, and tangent. Okay, so one of the things that you'll notice is that you're going to see several problems that will look like they've been all expanded out, and what you'll need to do is put them back together again. These first two are a good example of that. So when you look at this problem, notice that we see this angle and this angle, and this is essentially our angle A and our angle B. Now recall that with the tangent formula, whatever symbol we see in the numerator is the formula that we're using. So this is my formula for tangent of A minus B. So now that we know what angle A and B are, we can go ahead and set this up as tangent of pi twelfths minus 5 pi twelfths. After simplifying, that turns into negative 4 pi twelfths, or tangent of negative pi thirds, which we know to be negative root 3. All right, if we look at the next problem, this one here is also expanded out, and we want to go ahead and condense it. Looking here, we see this is the cosine formula, and this would be my angle A, my angle B. So this is cosine of A, and then the cosine formula uses the opposite symbol, so cosine of A plus B. And if we go ahead and add those two angles together, we end up getting cosine of 18 pi over 24, or cosine of 3 pi fourths, which gives me negative root 2 over 2. So the trick to these problems is when it looks like it is all expanded out, that what you want to do is you want to go ahead and condense it back and then simplify. All right, the next category of problems are when we see something such as this and our directions just tell us to simplify. So what we want to do is we want to first start with the identity. Which identity does it most closely match? So when I see this problem, what this identity reminds me of is the cosine 2 theta equals 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. Now that we have an identity that is similar to the problem, we want to ask ourselves, well, how can I modify this identity? So when I look at this and I compare to what I'm given, here I have a 4, here I have a 2. Here I have a 2, here I have a 1. So essentially my given problem is double my identity. So the way that I can fix this is I can double the entire equation on the left and the right. Also notice that the angle that we see here is my theta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 2, and I'm also going to plug in my angle for theta. So that gives me 2 cosine of 2 times pi over 8 equals 4 cosine squared pi over 8 minus 2. At this point we ask ourselves, do I have a match? And since this right side of the equation matches the problem that I'm trying to solve, since this right here is a match, then I can go ahead and I can solve the other side of the equation. I can't do anything to the right side of the equation because I don't know the cosine of pi eighths to go ahead and solve it, and I am not allowed to distribute inside the parentheses. That is a big no-no. So on the left, I can go ahead, this I can simplify because I'm supposed to do 2 times theta. So right now I have 2 times the cosine of pi fourths, so 2 times root 2 over 2, giving me a final answer of root 2. All right, go ahead and try the next one on your own, and then unpause the video and check your answer. Okay, so when we look at this problem, we recognize that this most closely matches the identity 1 minus 2 sine squared theta. However, in order to have a complete match, we need to multiply both sides of the equation by 1/2. After doing so, we have a match on the right. Therefore, we can go ahead and solve on the left, doing 1/2 times the cosine of 150, giving us negative root 3 over 4. Whenever we see problems that involve an angle A and B, we want to go ahead and make our double XYR chart. So we'll have our XYR for angle A and B, and oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's move this back down. There we go. We'll have our double XYR chart for A and B, and then we can go ahead and we can fill in everything that we know. So we know that angle A is in quadrant 3, therefore X and Y are negative. Quadrant B is in quadrant 3, so X and Y are negative. Always put those negatives in right away so you don't forget about them. Okay, so for angle A, we have the cosine is negative 15 over 17. So we can fill in x and r, and then we should recognize this is a triple, 8, 15, 17. And for angle B, we can fill in x is -4, r is 5, and then also b is a triple, so we know that b is -3. All right, now when we go ahead and plug in this formula, we are going to have tan A plus tan B. So we'll have 8 over 15 plus 3 over 4, and then we will divide this by 1 minus tan A tan B. So 1 minus 8 over 15 times 3 over 4. And then from here, we are going to go ahead and simplify. Now to simplify this, we need to multiply everything by the LCD. And for this problem, your LCD is 60. Sorry about that. Okay, so I multiply everything by 60, and we multiply 60, 60, 60, and 60. And when we go ahead and simplify this, we can essentially cancel off all of our denominators. And that results with 32 plus 45 over 60 minus 24. And from here, we get our final answer of 77 over 36. All right, in these last two problems, this is where we are going to see how we can switch between theta and 2 theta. Just like we did for the A and B problems, let's make ourselves a double XYR chart. So XYR for theta and 2 theta. We know for theta that we have -1 and 3, and we know that theta is in quadrant 2. So I know that y is positive, and after I do Pythagorean theorem, I will get 2 root 2. Okay. So let's start with our first one, sine of 2 theta. Now we should know all of these formulas by heart. So 2 sine theta cosine theta. And based on what we see in our chart, we know that we will have 2 times 2 root 2 over 3 times -1 over 3. Now from here, I can go ahead and I can multiply across. So that's going to give me -4 root 2 over 9. Now with this information, this tells me the y and the r for angle 2 theta. So I can add that to my chart over here. I can add -4 root 2 for y and 9 for r. Now at this point, theoretically, I could solve for x using XYR and answer the questions about cosine and tangent. However, it's sometimes helpful to at least do one more of these, because if you use the XYR chart to find the other two, chances are you will miss a negative sign if it is there. So now let's go ahead and do cosine of 2 theta. Now, since I was given cosine of theta, I'm going to use the formula that is 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. And this is kind of like my safety net, just in case my sine of theta happens to be wrong. So I have 2 times -1/3 squared minus 1. So 2 times 1/9 minus 1. 2/9 minus 9/9 gives me -7/9. And I already knew that my r was 9, so this reinforces that, and now I see that my x is -7. If I would have solved by doing Pythagorean theorem for the XYR, I probably would have missed the fact that I had a negative on my x. Now when I go to do tangent, I can simply take my y over x and get -4 root 2 over -7, which gives me +4 root 2 over 7. Now, let's say we were to go ahead and solve it out the other way. If we were to solve it out using our formula, then we would do 2 tan theta over 1 minus tan theta squared, which gives me 2 times 2 root 2 over -1 divided by 1 minus 2 root 2 squared. All right, so my numerator is just going to be 4 root 2, and my denominator is going to be 1 minus 8, which gives me, oh, sorry, that was negative. -4 root 2 over -7, or +4 root 2 over 7, just like we got up here. So as you can see, you can solve it either way, but I would recommend at least picking 2 of the 3 to help make sure you have the right positive or negative signs. All right, last problem set. So here we're given cosine of 2 theta, and we're telling you that theta is in between 270 and 360, which means that theta is in quadrant 4. So if we do our XYR chart for theta and 2 theta, we know for 2 theta that we have 15 and 17, And we know that theta is in quadrant 4, therefore the x is positive and the y is negative. Okay, so we want to find sine of theta. So based on what we know that cosine of 2 theta equals, and there's 3 different formulas, so let's use the formula that only has sine. So we'll say 1 minus 2 sine squared theta. All right, so we plug in the value that we are given right here. And then this is where we get to have a little algebra party. So we're going to subtract 1, which is the same as subtracting 17 over 17, giving me negative 2 over 17. Then from here, I'm going to have equals negative 2 sine squared theta. So now I need to divide both sides by negative 2. And that gives me 1 over 17 equals sine squared theta. And now I square root both sides. Now normally we would have a plus or minus and we wouldn't know if the sign was positive or negative. However, we were told that theta was in quadrant 4, so we know y is negative. So I can say that my sine of theta equals negative 1 over root 17. Now, when you write your answer on the blank, you want to give your answer rationalized. However, for your XYR chart, it's a lot easier if you just leave it in unreduced or unrationalized form, because then the numbers are much simpler to work with. So for right now, I'm going to leave it that way in the XYR chart. Now, when I go to solve for cosine of theta, just like I did before, there are multiple formulas for cosine 2 theta. So I can say cosine 2 theta equals 2, cosine squared theta minus 1. We plug in what we know. And just like we did before, we are going to undo this algebra. So we are going to add 17 over 17 to the other side, which gives me 32 over 17. Then we are going to divide by 2, which gives me 16 over 17 equals cosine squared theta. Square root both sides, giving me 4 over radical 17 for cosine theta. So my x value is going to be 4. Again, I got the same r value of root 17. So now, when I go to do tangent of theta, I'll ignore that little one right there. When I go to do tangent of theta, I can just do y over x and get negative 1 over 4. So my final answers that I would go ahead and I would put on the blanks for cosine, I would say 4 root 17 over 17. For sine, negative root 17 over 17. And for tangent, negative 1 over 4. All right, hope that helps, and good luck studying for your quiz tomorrow. Let's find out. Oh shoot, I just started my video again. Man, it's been a rough day. All right, we are all done. Good luck studying.